Hot takes, you know them, you hate them, but you can't stop talking about them. Earlier today, I asked you guys for some of your hottest anime takes. I did so on both Twitter and YouTube, and you guys delivered. I then went through them and picked the best ones. You know how this works. Let's not waste time and get right to it. Make sure to subscribe. This is in response to Supercube episode 7. You know, maybe over animation is a real thing, or perhaps it's the lack of substantial directorial intent, far more likely. Either way, this is very impressive from a purely 2D animation perspective and simultaneously so flat. Oh hey, that's me. Alright, so this blew the f up on Twitter. This offhand spur of the moment tweet of mine became the epicenter of heated debates, copy pastas, and insults because of course it's Twitter. As such, one might say it's a take that's quite hot. So let's address this tweet for a second or several minutes. Let's clarify what I meant, let's add a bit of context, and let's have a discussion. Disclaimer, I will spend some time on this one. The way I see it, I got plenty of over animation related takes from you guys, so this is just me addressing all of them, all while clarifying my stance on the subject. Sounds good? Let's go. First off, I don't believe over animation is a real thing. I want to get that across as clearly as possible. That first line is obviously sarcastic. It's like, oh, maybe this obviously fake thing is actually real, or perhaps it's this actually real and relevant phenomena. I meant it like that. Once again, for the people in the back, there is no such thing as over animation. There is, however, a thing known as bad animation. The things you associate with the former are usually examples of the latter. The movement looks too flowy and weightless. That's poor frame placement or spacing, or it's an intentional stylistic choice. In case of artists like Keiichiro Watanabe, the movement is too fast and difficult to follow. Your problem might lie with the direction or the way the animator approaches movement. Also, it can just be a cool looking fight, plain and simple. Point is, there is no scenario in which less animation is the solution to a problem. Better animation or different animation, sure, but not less animation. With all that being said, what exactly is my problem with this fight? If not over animation, then what? Well, let's talk about it. I was quite vague in that tweet, mainly because I hadn't come to a concrete conclusion at the time. I was simply relaying an observation of mine based on a few clips I saw. Why did I not form my opinions in a cohesive manner? Because it's fucking Twitter. It's not exactly a place for meaningful, thought-provoking discussion. Anyway, that tweet was vague, but this section won't be. Before I go through my issues with the fight though, I want to get this out of the way. The fight is very impressive. A lot of time and effort has clearly gone into it. I'll gladly acknowledge that. Making things move this well and for such a long period of time is an unbelievable feat of animation. Neon41 and everyone else involved with this episode did a phenomenal job. Also, the episode does flow better when watched from front to back instead of in its clip form. Doing so reduced the severity of some of my problems. With all that being said though, it wasn't perfect. As a brief rundown of my issues with this fight, mainly the direction. The pacing and tempo, it was too one note. There's very little variation, there's no slowdown and speed up, there's no build up to a grand conclusion, it's just thing. There are exceptions, sure. This slow motion shot or this slowed down punch, for example. These shots change up the tempo and as a result feel so much more impactful. I wish this fight had more of that. Here's the thing, it's important to buffer fast moving scenes with slow moments and vice versa. Even animators who are known to direct extremely fast moving action do so, but this fight for the most part doesn't. The individual rounds of exchanges feel so monotone. Again, it's not about slow or fast pacing, it's about the variation between them. The pacing being this one note and monotone desensitizes the brain, it makes the tempo predictable. Here's an example of this style done right. Solo Leveling. I could have picked other shows, but I know this will make certain people mad, so I decided to go with this one. Look at these two scenes from Jinwoo vs Igris. The first round of combat is fast paced, but it's not as fast as it can be, while the final round is significantly faster. The fight builds, the pace goes up instead of being the same. You get my point, right? Variety, it's very important, especially in long fights. The second major issue is wasted motion. What do I mean by that? Well, short answer, I think this fight is not that well choreographed, which I know sounds blasphemous. What do you mean it's not well choreographed? It's hand-to-hand combat. Well, that alone doesn't mean much. Like I said, there is a lot of wasted motion without a clear purpose. Characters jumping for no reason, on them swaying their arms with no particular goal in mind, random unnecessary flips and acrobatics that would be detrimental to the doer and give the enemy plenty of opportunities to attack if this was a real fight, dull spots between exchanges of strikes because it's time to do something else. Some of it feels contrived for lack of a better term. Of course, that doesn't mean the entire thing was poorly constructed, absolutely not. There were sensible exchanges, but a significant portion of the action didn't have a clear intent behind them. That's what I meant by lack of directorial intent. You're on a beam where it's difficult to maintain footing regardless of how competent you are as a fighter. Why would you flip around? Do let me know if there's a plot reason behind stuff like this. I doubt it, but I'm not familiar with the story. Some said the fight was difficult to follow, but I don't think so. Also, I don't think difficult to follow is a real critique in most instances. Who said a fight needs to be easy to follow? It doesn't. It depends on the context. I just think the lack of variety in the pacing coupled with the unnecessary motion made it difficult for the audience to properly sink their teeth into the fight on an exchange by exchange basis. That's not the same thing as being difficult to follow. The third issue is the background. It's drab, yes, but that's just the setting. I can't blame the production team for that. The issue is the way the objects feel like weightless props that are just there to be used. It's the way the walls, pillars and objects disintegrate into cubes the second someone makes contact with them. Again, it feels a bit contrived. The work is clearly emulating Yutaka Nakamura, but I don't think it's particularly cognizant of the idea behind the concept of Yutapon cubes or cubic debris in general. The debris feels weightless. Someone said they look like Lego bricks, and I'm inclined to agree. And that's pretty much all there is to the negatives. Out of these points, only the one about the pacing was significant. The rest are nitpicks for the most part. Also, I don't particularly care if Nyan emulates Yutaka Nakamura, because who doesn't? Although a bit of variety in the style of motion would have been appreciated. Fantastic work all around though. Alright, we spent a lot of time on that one. Let's blitz through the rest. Orb on the Movements of the Earth is really boring. The Raphael arc feels new and exciting, but as the show goes on, it just recycles the same idea over and over again with different characters and motives. Over time, it became a chore to watch. I can see where you're coming from, and I don't exactly disagree. Here's the thing, the reason why I didn't really talk about Orb despite the countless requests was because I was quite lukewarm on it. Why? Because of a personal pet peeve of mine. I hate it when a show changes main characters. I can't stand it, and Orb does that a lot. Because of that, I found it difficult to be invested. The characters kept dying and being replaced, and the story wasn't exactly the most gripping thing in the world. I understand what they were going for. The idea of curiosity being an inherent human value and curious people with scientific temperaments existing regardless of how dark the times are. I get that, but just because I understand it doesn't mean I like it. I too found this show to be a bit boring, which is a shame because I thought the first 3 episodes were phenomenal. They genuinely left me at awe, but that awe soon turned into awe, as in, awe, what a shame. Verdict, I agree, kinda. We need more gatekeeping. Normies just complain about anime and just watch shonen. Now, gatekeeping is stupid, it's counterproductive, and it's not exactly a real thing, because how can one stop people from interacting with media? It's not possible. It's a pointless exercise, or at least that's what I thought for most of my life. Recently, the Trash Taste podcast talked about The House in Fata Morgana, a semi-popular visual novel in passing, and I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. I love Fata Morgana, it's one of my favorite things ever, and the idea of that fan base finding out about it and arguing about, I don't know, who the better waifu is terrified me. And that's when I realized maybe gatekeeping isn't that bad after all. That was mostly a joke, but I can see why some of you might not want your niche favorite to become mainstream, especially if you think the mainstream audience won't appreciate it the way you do. I get that, but what are you going to do about it? At the end of the day, you can't stop people from reading or watching something. Might as well ditch the mental anguish and interact with media like a normal person. Verdict, I disagree. People don't know how to engage with stories properly on the story's own terms. By that I mean them using rigid checklists with stupid categories like peaks, themes, and backstories to compare different stories. What you just described is an example of what I like to call the critic phenomena. It's that thing where every motherfucker with internet access thinks of themselves as a critic. Sad Sadly, most of them don't quite understand the logic behind some of the terms actual critics use. They can't comprehend the fact that the same metrics don't apply to every show out there. Now, what's wrong with that, you might ask? Let people critique shows in any way they see fit, right? Who am I to tell them how they should approach this subject? Well, yes, you can do whatever you want, but I feel like by doing what I just described, you aren't being honest with yourself. You're evaluating shows based on what someone else looks for. That person is probably right, those are his or her metrics and they probably change depending on the show. You are the moron. Evaluate shows based on the way you feel, please, I beg you. It's fine if you don't like a show everyone else likes, there's nothing wrong with that. Take it from me, I don't give a single solitary about fan bases I offend, I just say what I feel, and I feel like everyone else should do the same. If I wanted an objective review, not a real thing by the way, I'd feed scripts into an AI model. You're human, act like one. Verdict, I agree. People who don't know how animation is created don't have a valid opinion on whether a show is well animated. They don't have the right to argue about it. Learn the process of animation and I'll gladly listen to your opinion. Now that's profoundly stupid. Your take is just another version of those, oh, you don't like it, why don't you animate it yourself comments. It doesn't make any sense. Every single human out there has the right to critique a publicly available piece of art. Are there stupid takes out there? Yes, lots and lots. Is it better if the critic actually knows the subject of animation? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean you need to be an animator to critique animation, the same way you don't need to be a chef to critique the food you eat, or be an author to critique the book you read, or be a musician to critique the music you listen to. It's art. Anyone, and I mean anyone, has the right to have an opinion on it. Now, does the opinion of a professional hold more value? Usually yes, although I have seen plenty of professionals have stupid, borderline disrespectful takes, but as a whole, yes. But that doesn't mean non-professional opinions are not valid. They absolutely are. Verdict, I disagree. Top tier compositing is more important than actual 2D/3D animation. An anime could have the bare minimum animation and a step above the bare minimum for the priority episodes, but if you pair that with top-notch compositing, it becomes a well-rounded, incredible visual product. Not exactly. Don't get me wrong, compositing is very important. Absolutely. Bad compositing can cripple good animation, but it cannot, by definition, be more important than 2D animation. Compositing, at the end of the day, isn't just about adding filters and textures, it's about bringing the various visual layers together. And if the main layer, aka the 2D animation, is bad, the final product will suffer. At best, the compositing can hide some of the issues, but it has no real way of fixing them. Look at it this way. Animation shines when the compositing is good, and it shines when the compositing is minimal. Even when the compositing is actively bad, good animation can shine, just not as brightly. On the flip side, bad animation leads to a bad product no matter how good the comp is. Verdict, I disagree. Now that anime is so mainstream globally, it should really come out of that otaku shell and actually cater towards the global and normal audience too. I vehemently disagree with that. In my opinion, art loses all meaning when it goes out of its way to cater to the masses. That to me is the worst thing that can possibly happen to an art form. I think anime is one of the very few art forms out there that is still able to be itself to an unapologetic degree. Why change that? Yes, it does cater to audiences, but it caters to audiences that it has created. It's a cycle. Anime fans and anime influence each other, and I think that's great. The medium cares about the people who care about the medium. That makes sense to me. I don't see why anime should go out of its way to cater to the people who don't like it to begin with. Why should the art form budge instead of the audience? That's inherently anti-art. If one doesn't like anime, one simply doesn't watch it. It really is that simple. I think the people anime is meant for, the abnormal ones as you put it, will find their way to it sooner or later. I did, and so did all of you. Verdict, wholeheartedly disagree. And that should just about do it. Do you agree with these takes? Do you not? Let me know down in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe. Check out this other bit of content, and until next time.